Hi Kachimos, it's Kate and Kay, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be reviewing Season 1, Episode 1 of Love on the Spectrum. But before we get started, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those post notifications so you know when I'm uploading new videos or posts. Today's verse of the day is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the video. First, I want to say I do apologize for taking so long in between videos. I'm trying to post like 2 to 3 days a week, but I've just been trying to adjust to a new job. I've been working at my new summer job for about a month, and also I just have some other stuff going on, but I will upload when I can. And I just want to put a disclaimer is that I am not a medical professional. And this is just my opinion, so please don't throw any shade or anything to anybody on Love on the Spectrum. This is just my opinion and my view as someone who also has autism, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, typically in a reality TV show, in the first season, or in the first episode of a first season, there's usually, it's usually an introductory episode. So I'm first going to start with the cast member, Dani. So, Dani is a Caucasian, Mexican, and Asian woman on the autism spectrum. She was in her mid-20s at the time in this season and episode. She's lived with her aunt and uncle in LA since the age of 11. So far, it isn't specified as to why she lives with them instead of her parents. Dani loves anime and started her own animation company in her early teens with her aunt and uncle's assistance. She was positively influenced to start her business by the creator of Pokemon, who also has autism, and started his company in his late teens. So she teaches anime classes to those who are on the autism spectrum, which I think is so cool. Dani has a bachelor's and a master's degree. One thing she said that stuck out to me was when she claimed that many people with autism say she's too smart and motivated, while those who are neurotypical think she's too strange. More on that later. Some things Dani looks for in a guy are that he has a career and is financially secure. She would like her romantic and professional life to coincide, as she wants a guy who has his own business and would like to be lovers and work partners. Dani also expresses that she finds men with long shoulder-length hair and an androgynous style attractive, but expresses dislike for facial hair. She believes in love at first sight and wants to get married and have a surrogate child one day due to her fear of experiencing labor pains. So the next cast member I'll be talking about is James. So James is a man with Asperger's syndrome who is in his mid-30s in this episode and season. Now, I know that term is outdated, but I want to give you all an idea as to how he uses his diagnosis, or how he expresses his diagnosis. He claims that he doesn't base his whole identity on his diagnosis, but said that he had trouble getting the support he needed growing up. James lives with his parents in Massachusetts. He also has a younger brother, William. James has said that he's had many dating profiles online and matched with some women, but they never agreed to meet him in real life. Wait, I don't know if James said that or his parents said that, but either way, that has been, expressed on the show. He's looking for a woman who's somewhat similar to him, fairly attractive, has good hygiene, and has radiant energy. Okay, now we have Abbey. So Abbey is a woman on the autism spectrum who was in her early to mid-20s in this episode and season and lives with her mother and brother. She was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2 through being in a preschool where someone there, I'm guessing a teacher or a director, said they couldn't keep her in the program, which led to an evaluation. Abbey did have a boyfriend in high school, but they ended up breaking up. She expresses she would love to go to Africa someday. Abbey also loves to collect Disney princess dolls and stuffed animals, and also loves Candy Crush and the movie The Little Mermaid. She claims that autism makes her feel not human and feels like Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Abby's looking for a man who has mutual interests with her, understands her autism, and to spend quality time with. Another person on the show is Jennifer. So Jennifer is an autism expert who is on the autism spectrum and also has 3 children who have autism. Jennifer found out she was on the autism spectrum about 10 years before featuring on the show. She describes autism as a constellation of behaviors, challenges, and aptitudes. Jennifer also takes medication, which might be for her autism, potential comorbid diagnoses she may have, or a medication that helps with autism off-label. When she visits Abbey, she discusses with her that when Abbey is on a date, she's trying to build a friendship and to ask questions and provide answers. Jennifer observed that Abbey needs to work on staying in the present moment as she has a habit of frequently changing topics. So Jennifer works with Abbey before her date to enhance her social skills. Abbey quickly made progress when conversing with Jennifer. Meanwhile, Dani prepares for her date by putting on makeup and taking a shot of tequila offered by her Aunt Sandy. James doesn't have a date in this episode, but meets up with his brother William for some dating advice. So Abbey and Dani are both going on blind dates. Abbey has a date with a man, David, at the Welcome to Wildlife Learning Center. A few things we know about David in this episode are that he's in his mid-20s, an animal lover. His favorite food is a plain cheeseburger. He likes being in car washes and isn't keen on horror movies and clowns. Abbey and David both find out that they share a love for animals and the movie The Little Mermaid. At the end, they mutually express that they had a good time together, and David gifts Abbey a flamingo bracelet. Meanwhile, Dani has a dinner date with a young man named Solomon who loves writing poetry, good vibes, the law of attraction, and spirituality. He received his associate's degree and plans to work with children who have disabilities. They both share common interests in anime and are passionate about helping others with disabilities. Dani says to the producers that she's already in love with Solomon, and soon after she blurts out to Solomon that she's in love with him and that he's hot. This causes Solomon to get overwhelmed and politely excuse himself, which is where the episode ends. Dun dun dun! I'm sorry I had to do that. I really didn't want to. I thought that would be a little embarrassing, but you know what, it's fine. Okay, so when I make commentary videos on Love on the Spectrum, I wanted to educate my audience about autism to reduce stigma and keep an open mind when socializing with others. A quick side note, autism is not a disease, but the CDC does discuss other topics than just diseases. Autism is just a neurotype and a neurological condition, nothing more, nothing less. Anyways, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the likelihood for having autism increases if you have a sibling with autism, or it may increase. But yeah, if you have a sibling with autism, have certain genetic or chromosomal chromosomal conditions such as Fragile X syndrome, experience complications at birth, and or were born to older parents. Support options for autism include but are unlimited to applied behavior analysis, sensory integration therapy, social skills groups, and cognitive behavior therapy. Now, there has been some controversy in regards to applied behavior analysis or ABA therapy, but I'll make a separate video on that at some point. Symptoms of autism vary from person to person, as autism does run on a spectrum, hence the name autism spectrum disorder. These symptoms may include, but are unlimited to, struggling to maintain eye contact or avoiding it altogether, fixating on special interests, finding change overwhelming, finding comfort in certain routines, and unusual reactions to the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. Now, regarding my opinion on this episode, oh gosh, where do I start? So, I guess I'll start with the narrator and music. The narrator sounds like she's narrating an animal nature show, rather a reality dating show. Allow me to demonstrate. David loves car washes. David doesn't like clowns. Then the music sounds so childlike compared to other reality dating shows or reality shows that feature dating, such as the 2000s reality show The Hills, which was broadcasted on MTV. It comes across as infantilization, indirect and subtle exclusion, and minimizing the life experiences people on the autism spectrum face. Autism isn't all sunshines and rainbows. It's hard. I would love to not find even the subtlest noises so painful. I would love to not have the burden of deciding as to whether or not I should disclose my diagnosis at work, or having to explain to autistic people what autism is when most adults have access, to the internet and can do the research for themselves. I would love to have the energy to do anything and everything without shutting down, being irritable, needing breaks, or experiencing extreme fatigue after intentionally or unintentionally socially masking for all or most of the day. And yes, while people with autism are different from autistic people, these cast members are adults, not children, and have the desire to date just as much as autistic people do, though it may look different depending on their support needs, ability to socially mask, and who they're involved with romantically. My opinion on Dani is that I think she's very motivated and dedicated to her work. While everyone's high education journey is different, it's so cool that she had both her bachelor's and master's degrees at just 26 years old. However, I wish her aunt and uncle didn't try to make her feel bad when she expressed wanting a man who's financially stable. For me, I'm a Christian and I believe in traditional gender roles for the most part. What I mean by that is that I don't think there's anything wrong with a Christian woman working from home part or full-time, doing seasonal work part or full-time, or getting a part-time job near the house, and especially in this economy. And if you feel like the Lord is leading you to have a career of some kind and be a homemaker for your husband and children, you should do it. If it's the Lord's will I get married and have children one day, and he says that I should have some sort of employment during that season of life, I'm more than happy to do that. If not, that's all right too. The Lord always finds a way. I'm hoping that when I meet this special someone, he'll be open to multi-generational housing if he can't afford to get a house for us alone. But like Dani, I do look for some financial stability. A man better be working full-time or a combination of school and work. But my biggest priority when looking for a potential spouse is if he's a saved Christian and has a relationship with the Lord, as well as similar beliefs on theology, politics, and parenting, and being physically well kept. Caring about yourself on both the inside and out shows a lot of how you think of the Lord, me, and future children. I somewhat relate to Dani on facial hair. It's not my thing, but I personally think it depends on how, like, the man maintains it, as well as his face and body shape. Some men just look better without it. I take pride in the hair on my head and hope the guy the Lord may have for me is the same way. I also felt like when Dani's aunt mentioned that Dani used to look up how to kiss online was kind of odd. I don't know how consent goes behind the scenes or how scripted Love on the Spectrum is, but Dani at first, in my view, looked a bit uncomfortable and then started going along with it and began making facial expressions of her kissing a hypothetical cupcake. So cringe. Either way, I think that's something Dani probably should have brought up so it doesn't look like her aunt is speaking for her when she was talking about what's a pretty intimate moment. Because once something is out online or on national television, you can't take it back. It's out there forever, and that's just something for everyone to remember. If Dani doesn't care, that's fine, but this is just how I'm interpreting things from the show. I'm sure, it was innocent, but, you know how reality TV can be. I also like how the show filmed Dani taking a shot of tequila as autism representation for the most part in media and pop culture. Doesn't really depict with adults with autism as, well, adults. Another thing I wanted to touch on was when Dani said she was in love with Solomon on their first date. I feel like that was a bit of a stretch, and here's why. In the beginning of a dating relationship, you're typically in love with the idea of that person because you really don't know who that person is well enough yet. My mother heard on a podcast, I'm not sure what it was called, but she said one of the things that stuck out to her was when the person said that people in relationships typically don't show their true colors until about 6 to 12 months in that relationship. It makes sense because in any new relationship, you want to try and make that relationship work. But you can't put up that facade for long. Obviously, everyone's different. On some dates I went on, some guys showed their true colors right away, which looking back was a blessing in disguise because my time, energy, and emotions weren't wasted on that person for very long, if at all. I think Dani would have benefited from some coaching from Jennifer, but I'm not really sure how that was decided on the show. I'm sure Dani wasn't intentionally trying to love bomb Solomon or anything like that, because people with autism can struggle socially. However, I did relate to Dani when she said those who are neurotypical think she's too strange, whereas people with autism say she's too smart and motivated. It can be very hard for me to relate to both my peers who are autistic and allistic. Most, if not all, of my friends who had autism never lasted for so many reasons, mostly due to differences in emotional maturity, and some of these friends in the past had difficulties with respecting certain boundaries I had or needed to make. However, I know part of it was on me because I do struggle with setting boundaries, mostly with peers, because I do desire social connection. I know that's something I have to work on, but I have gotten a lot better with setting boundaries with most of my roommates during my first year away at university. Now, let's move on to James. I felt like he was getting agitated when his parents were trying to get him to get his hair professionally cut. So James has curly blonde shoulder-length hair and claims that it's a part of how he expresses himself. Look, I'm not too crazy about long hair on guys, but there are some women, such as Dani, that do like it. The problem is He's probably been forced to mask based on what he said about him having a lack of support growing up. I'll also make another video at some point about how the understanding of autism has evolved. But in regards to masking, everyone has to mask, including those who are allistic in some way or another. But how people who are autistic or allistic handle it is very different. But if his hair is a part of his individuality, that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. He seems to maintain his hair well, which is important at the very least for, say, a job interview. But it's the context that matters. When his father says that James is in competition with other males, that made me so frustrated. I think given how old James is, he knows he's potentially competing with men in many areas of life, especially allistic men. He doesn't need to constantly be reminded of that when there's already so much pressure on those who are neurodivergent to conform to certain societal rules. I think as long as his hair isn't like... I think as long as his hair is, like, well-maintained by him and, you know, gets trimmed once in a while professionally, it shouldn't be a huge deal. Happy medium. For example, I like to honor God by wearing a ring. However, my dress code at my current job for the summer says I cannot have, like, a ring with jewels on it. And I also believe jewelry on your wrists as well. So I bought myself a new one, and the old one was kind of damaged anyways. The new one has no jewelry or jewels on it, and it's just a simple stainless steel ring. Again, happy medium. It's a reminder for me to be set apart from the world, follow the Lord, and be a good example to others by reflecting Christ's character. So far, I really like Abby. I relate to her because she's very girly, and of course she has autism. I was actually diagnosed at the same age as I was when I got diagnosed. So far, I think her and David are a great match. Abby is very bubbly, while David seems very chill. Sometimes I think having some opposites in personality do attract. Another thing I wanted to express is that sometimes, though, sameness isn't always better in a relationship. While some people with autism might thrive with being in relationships with other people with autism, this isn't always the case. Before I became a saved Christian, I had a boyfriend who is now my ex and dated 5 guys at different times. My ex, as far as I know, was neurotypical, but seemed to struggle a lot with anxiety. And as an empath, I could sense that. The tension was so sharp you could cut it with a knife. He also had a lot of friends with autism who speculated he might be on the autism spectrum as well. His youngest brother has autism, so I see it as you never know. Again, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm saying that because if he has a sibling with autism, like the CDC said, that may increase one's likelihood of having it. Either way, I had to break up with him for so many reasons. His anxiety was way too intense for me. He love-bombed me and gave off red pill vibes. Also, he was agnostic, and while I wasn't a saved Christian, it probably wouldn't have been good in the long haul. About 7 months after I broke up with my ex, I dated a guy on the autism spectrum. So I'm considered to have level 1 or low support needs autism. I believe that he had that type of autism as well. I have to make a video on the different levels of autism and how to, distinguish them, because I really don't find levels very helpful for me. I find my support needs vary based on what life circumstances I'm in and different areas of my life. Anyways, he was actually diagnosed earlier than me. I was diagnosed with autism at 2.5, and he was diagnosed at 6 months. However, this guy only had one thing on his mind, and I'm not going to say explicitly what it is, because I'm sure you all know what some young men have on their minds about women, okay? So yeah, that didn't work out. The next guy I dated had both ADHD and anxiety. So I also have ADHD. It's not traditional ADHD where I can take stimulants, but nonetheless, I was still diagnosed with a form of ADHD and, still relevant. I felt we were a good match regarding our life paths and common interests, as well as our Christian upbringings, but he felt like I deserved someone better. Now, that takes a lot of guts and maturity to say that. Granted, I didn't take it well. I was crying, but now I understand, looking back, why I was better off. Then I dated 2 guys who were supposedly neurotypical. There's not really much to say about them. The first one also only had one thing on his mind when it came to dating me, and the second guy I didn't feel a romantic connection with. The last guy I dated before becoming a saved Christian had OCD, but he seemed to be in a good place mentally and was very calm, cool, and collected, but I didn't feel a connection to him either. After I became a saved Christian, I was talking to a guy, and we were going to meet up for a date, but I ended up canceling it due to him love bombing me and giving off red pill vibes. He had a lot of resentment towards women and claimed to be a Christian, but seemed to have some contradictions to that. Look, I'm not saying Christians are perfect. We have our struggles and only God is perfect. But I felt the Holy Spirit telling me to run. And I had Christians who had more experience than me in the romantic department, including my mother telling me as well that this was a guy to avoid. So I ended up cutting ties with him. Also, he said he might have been on the autism spectrum, and he also has, a sibling with autism, so go figure. I personally don't think dating a man on the autism spectrum is right for me unless he was similar to the guy I dated in regards to, early intervention and where we fell on the autism spectrum. That's not me trying to come off as insensitive, but if the Lord has that in mind, I'll definitely be open to it. Again, I think it depends on where the guy falls on the spectrum, but I'm more geared to dating an holistic man or a man who is neurodivergent in other ways, such as ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia. It depends on who the Lord leads me to be with. Now, apart from having shared beliefs or neurotypes, I really need a man who is calm, cool, and collected, who can keep me grounded. A man who is constantly highly anxious, high-strung, and on edge will no doubt scare me off quickly. I'm an empath, so that doesn't really surprise me. In short, I need peace if I'm going to be in a marital relationship someday, as well as have children. I don't want to parent both my future husband and future children. I need to have interdependence in a marital relationship. In the future, I need my future husband to not be hooked on video games all day, especially when he comes home from work. Look, 30 minutes to an hour is fine, but I'm talking crazy hours as if it's an addiction. That's a boy who shaves, not a man. Men have responsibilities, as do women, and need to be willing to make sacrifices as well as women. A key theme in a marital relationship is sacrifice. I'm not saying men who are autistic can't do that. I'm saying this in regards to all neurotypes. Also, I loved how Jennifer said that she has children who are on the autism spectrum. This shows that people with autism can handle the responsibility of being a parent. Again, that may look different, which is why I believe people with autism who have children should live close to family and friends if they need help looking after their children, and anyone in general, really. Okay, so that was it for today's video, you guys. If you want to see additional content and notifications, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, which will be in the description below. Please share this video with your family and friends, and comment down below if you have watched Love on the Spectrum and what your thoughts and takeaways are on it. And comment down below too if you are on the spectrum or know someone who's on the spectrum or might be on it. I love you all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.